Good morning, everybody, and what is today's topic on Coffee and Questions? We are going to do a follow-up on the same comment that a friend of mine made me, where he says he doesn't have a whole lot of tools. He can't really think of anything that he wants to make or to do, and he doesn't want to spend the money buying like a whole bunch of expensive tools. So I told him, well, have you ever thought of doing things out of pallet wood? And he said, no, where would I get that? And I go, well, pretty much any store around, like in the back of, whether it's Harbor Freight, it could be the grocery stores or businesses. I mean, a lot of times they've got these wood pallets like you see here in the picture, and they're throwing them out. They don't want anything for them. They just want to discard them. So you can pick them up and you can use them. And I'm going to show you pictures of things that you can make and you can do from pallets and from simple basic tools. Be like a slideshow. So if you want, stop anytime you want to, take your camera, take a picture of the things I'm showing you, and you can make these too. The other thing is, like I've always say over and over, I carry lots and lots of photos on my phone, and they're in categories, and I have people flip through them, and sometimes they end up wanting to buy something, and that fuels my hobby. Hopefully it works for you too. I'll start the slideshow. We'll make a few comments as we go along. So grab some coffee, just sit back and just watch the slides and see if there's something interesting that you might want to make. Here we go. All right, obviously the first thing to do is drive around until you find those pallets. Then you're going to load them up and you're going to take them home. You're going to take all the nails out of them and get them down into just usable pieces of lumber. It's going to take you a little bit of time to get all those nails out of them, but it's going to be worth it because the projects themselves, they're a lot of fun to make. You have no cost in this at this point. The materials were free. Or they might charge you a couple of bucks or something if you want the pallets, but most places just throw them out. So you should be able to find them really easily just by looking. Okay, let's start with the projects. First up is this rustic outdoor looking table that somebody had made. And what they did is they applied a really dark kind of a stain to it. You can do that, or my other suggestion is you can use one of those benzomatic torches with propane, and you can go along and you can burn this and make it look really distressed. You can leave it finished or unfinished, but this is one project idea, and let's just keep moving. Okay, here's another great idea where somebody had taken and they lightly burned it. They sanded it, they got it nice and clean, and then they went ahead and very lightly burned it all over. Now, this is before applying any stain or any finish to it, but the table design itself is a good idea. It's going to take you a little bit more time because of the angle of the cuts, but it's a good idea. Now, in this picture, it's just showing you where a guy had made a couple of simple doors on this little table so he could store stuff. It's a good idea also if it's something that you happen to need or want. Now, here's one that I really like the finish work on, and I read about this where he went ahead and he sanded it, then he lightly burned it using that torch that I told you about, then he applied a very light stain over it. And you can get Minwax stains from many big box stores, Lowe's, Home Depot, what have you. And then after that, he started to apply like a top finish to it. Now, for me, it didn't say what he used. I used Rust-Oleum 2x Ultra Gloss. People happen to like glossy finishes, but if you can use semi-gloss, you can use satin, whatever you want. Or don't use anything at all. But I would encourage you to at least use like linseed oil, which is not a finish in and of itself, but some kind of a finish on this that you can easily repair. If you use linseed oil, you could easily just wipe it down over the months as it gets faded and what have you. But if you're going to put a top finish over linseed oil, let it dry. I let mine dry for days, 3, 4, 5 days. Then I go ahead and I apply some kind of a top finish to it. So it's your choice. Finish we could talk about for a long period of time. That's not what this is meant for. Get out your cell phone, take photographs of something that you see on here that you like, grab that pallet wood, get out, let's make something. But I'm going to show you lots of examples. So feel free, just stop the video, scrub back, do whatever you got to do, take a picture, make some drawings. Let's have some fun with this. Let me keep going. Okay, now I went ahead and I put this one up here just as an example. You can do an entire wall in your home with this if you want to. But I would tell you pre-sand everything before you start putting it up. But some people like, an entire wall done with it and trimmed out, in this pallet wood. This is just an example of doing that. Here's another one where somebody, they didn't apply any dark stain to it, but they went ahead and they built like this couch for the outside of their house, and they made a small little coffee table, and it turned out nice. I mean, again, it's a matter of putting it together where you want and then doing the sanding. Now, talk about sanding, and then we'll move through more examples. I could start off with 60 grit or 80 grit. It depends on how damaged and how ugly the wood is, or how much, debris and crap is on it. And I use a belt sander, and I'll use the 60, 80, maybe even 120, and get this looking fairly nice the way that I want it. Then I switch over to a random orbital sander, and I may continue sanding, and I could go from that 120 to 150 to 220. And around 220, I would probably stop, because I always put a film finish on a lot of my woodwork. So you don't have to keep sanding higher and higher grits. And it is more or less meant to be like rustic and kind of antique-y looking anyway. But the guy did a good job on this. So I'm going to be quiet and keep flipping through the videos. All right, hang on. Okay, now in this one, I exploded this up pretty good for you to look at. And you can see where, he's made the armrests, and he's done, the wood slats and all this stuff. This whole thing's done out of that pallet wood. And it's a nice couch. Remember, when you make these, people, I think, make a mistake sometimes by making the back like totally vertical, like at a 90 degree. That's not comfortable. So when you make these, do the sides first, and then set that back in there and kind of tilt it back a little bit so it's comfortable when somebody sits and leans back against it. My other tip is, personally, I wouldn't use nails. You can, I don't. I use drywall screws, and I use wood glue. And I'll kind of glue the pieces of wood, and then I go ahead and I use the screws and secure it down. And it makes it just a much better bonding. Okay, that's just the way I do it. You could do it any way you want, of course. I'm just giving you a tip. Now, here's an example of somebody that made a coat rack, did a good job. This is kind of a whitewash finish where you can take like white paint or any color paint and add water. And being that it's water-based, you can thin it, and then you put it on there, and then you let it dry, and then you sand it, and you get this kind of an effect. So if you take a close look, you can see this was just rough sanded. He didn't spend a lot of time sanding it. Then he whitewashed it. He probably sanded it again very lightly, and then he added all the character and he wanted by sanding. And then he went out and he got these coat hooks from probably Home Depot. Okay, now here's an example of a shelf he built. Pretty slick, looks good. You can hang it up wherever you want, in your kitchen or wherever you think you might look good in your house. Okay, now in this one, he built a very simple box, very basic, very quick to make. Drilled holes in it, took some rope, put them through, tied some knots for handles. You can put it out on your dining room table, and you can put fruit in there as a decoration or whatever you want to use them for. This is a very fast, easy project. And he burned it a little bit. They look pretty good. Now in this picture, I'm showing you a guy, you can see on the bottom pictures, he's got a whole bunch of these pallets, and he probably does like production work, making lots of things out of pallet wood. But look at the one above, it was all in one picture. He's made this couch out of it. And this is what he does, and he whips out like a bunch of these, and after he makes a few, he's behind the learning curve, and he's probably stamping them out fairly fast. But you could take a look how this is constructed. It would not be that difficult for you to do if you want something for the outdoors. Looks kind of rustic, or if you want to spend the time sanding, you can make it look incredibly nice. Now, in this photo, you can see where he made this large sectional for outdoors, and he's applied some kind of a weather-resistant stain to it. He hasn't really put a finish on it, but this is like just this huge sectional. Did a good job on it, and I'm sure if he puts cushions or whatever he puts on it, it'll be nice looking all the way around. Now, this one I couldn't stretch out too much. It becomes too distorted, but I stretched out the best I could so you could take a look real close. You could see these were not hard to construct. They've got the flat bases for the seats. He even made this shelf-looking thing to put in front of it and hang it on a wall. So this gives you a workbench. If you want to make a little workbench, stick it up somewhere, make the stools, don't make them. But it's another interesting, quick way to do something with this pallet wood. Now, this is one that I really like. I mean, this one he spent a little bit more time on. He's burned it, he's played around with it, made it look distressed. You can see the rough sanding marks. He didn't do any finish sanding to really talk about. And then he went ahead and he put some kind of a very light stain on it. But this turned out nice, I thought, and put it up here so you can think about making one of these possibly. You can make them to your own dimensions. You don't have to make them huge. You can make them smaller, coffee tables, end tables, whatever you want to do. Now, in this picture I put up for a reason. Shows a girl putting some kind of a preservative on her finished pallet wood project. Lowe's and Home Depot sell all different kinds of materials. Now, I bought my stuff out at Home Depot. It's called Preserva-Wood. You can take a look. It's a stain as well as a wood preservative all in one. And you can get them in a multitude of colors. So it's like a two-step process reduced down to one. And I liked it, but you can finish these in a whole lot of different ways depending on what you want to do. But it actually, what I thought was nice about it is as the months go by and it fades, you could just simply go out and apply another coat to it, and there you go, and you just leave it alone. Now in this photograph, he just took the pallet wood and he made a back, and he's got that base. Really probably didn't have to do a whole lot to it. He attached eye hooks, chains, and he made a porch swing. Another good idea to do out of the pallet wood, and I thought this turned out pretty nice. You don't have to go overboard, like I said, on the finishing, and it looks nice and rustic. Now this one I couldn't blow up. It would just become way too distorted, but you can see here where he used the wood to make these little cubby holes in the shelf. Then he went out and he got these hooks. You can get them anywhere, Home Depot, Lowe's, hardware stores, whatever, and he went ahead and he attached these. He's lightly burned this. And he's went ahead, there's no stain on it really yet, he's just lightly burned it. But then you can apply stain over this if you want to, or you don't have to. You can leave it like this, or you can put a gloss clear coat. It's all on what you want to do on the finish, but this is a nice utility thing to have. I mean, you could put this above a washer or a dryer. You could put it on the inside of your house. You could do any number of things, and you can make it, like I said, in the dimensions that you want. Okay, now this is another variation on the same thing. It's just made differently. It gives you another idea of what can be done. Okay, now in this one you can see where he used the pallet wood and he cut some angles and he played around and he made a spice rack. It's another good idea. It's another quick, simple project. And he added stain to it. Of course, you can see how the darkness in the wood is. Okay, in this one he's made some bar stools, and the question that was down on the bottom is how did he make the round seats for this? You don't have to. You can go to Home Depot. I know mine has them. They're round bats and they're finished. There's 2 or 3 different sizes and you can buy them pre-finished. It's a little pricey, but saves you a lot of trouble, and it makes the seats on these stools faster for you to do. And then you can go ahead and you can finish the rest of this the way you want. What's interesting about this is he's put these 2 little shelves on the bottom and in the middle, which I thought was a good idea. It makes a nice little storage area. Okay, so on this one you can see where he's made a much longer coat rack with a shelf on it. And what he's done again is use different colors. Mainly he's using that whitewash that I was telling you about, and he's added the hooks to it, made it look real distressed, and then he's probably left it alone. I don't see that there's really any kind of a top finish to talk about, you know, but it looks nice. I mean, it's a good idea. Okay, here's one that I really liked. He used different colors of stains, obviously yellow and then with a light brown on it. I don't know if he's really put any kind of a top finish on it to talk about, but this is a nice big square table. You can make them smaller, any dimension you want. You can play around with the stains, making different colors. Then again, like I said, you can decide on any kind of a gloss finish, or if you just want to leave it satin, semi-gloss, or gloss. Okay, in this one he's made a little box kind of a thing with a tabletop. Pretty good idea. He spent a little bit of time on this, I can tell, and he sanded it real well. So you can get putty, whatever you need to plug up all the holes, sand over it, go through your grits like we were talking about. I usually will start off 80 or 100 grit, or 120 maybe, 150, then from 150 to 220, 220, maybe I'll go to 320. A lot of times I'll stop at 220 because I'm applying a film finish, like I said earlier. So it's your choice. You'll be able to tell when you start sanding, but make sure you go through the grits and remove all the previous marks from the grit before it. I mean, that's the trick when it comes to sanding. And I don't jump more than 50 if I can help it in terms of, grit size. Okay, now here's another one where a guy made 4 tables. He happened to put them together. You can see the seam. They're all made out of pallet wood. You can make them in a similar design if you want. That's another good idea. Okay, on this one, you see where he made an outside bar. Not that difficult. You could do the same thing if it's something that you have an interest in. Okay, here he used a pallet wood just to make a little storage rack for all of his scrap pieces of wood. you could do the same thing. Just throw it all together, and now you have a place to store all of your lumber in a vertical position. And here's an example of using a belt sander. Now, if you don't have one, don't worry about it. You can use your random orbital with rougher grits, 60, 80, keep going like that. But if you happen to have one, a belt sander's nice. I start off usually around 60 or 80, depending on how messed up the wood is. And I stop using it at 120, and I switch over to my random orbital. And I usually start 120, 150. Then I go through the grits like we described earlier, and then I decide on my finish. Okay, and here's a picture of a girl who's using that random orbital. It's a Ryobi. And like I said, if you don't have the belt sander, you can use the random orbital, and just make sure you go through your grits like we talked about and get the wood nice and clean in the way you want it. Then all you got to do is worry about the finish. Now when it comes to the finish, use scrap wood first before you apply it to your project. You can play around. You can get different color variations and make it the way that you want, and just write down or remember what you did, and then transfer it over onto your project. Don't just immediately jump to the project, because if it doesn't come out the way you want, well, you're screwed, because then you have to strip it down or scrap it out. Okay, now here's one that I really like what he did. He burned the legs on it, and he finished them. He burned the edge on this all the way around. Then he feathered it into the top of the table, and he did a nice job on this. Then he used a very light stain over the whole thing, and then he went ahead and he applied the top finish, some kind of a gloss or semi-gloss top. Sanded it, it looks nice. It's a nice way that he did this. So look, this is going to conclude the slideshow, and I'm giving you lots of examples and lots of different ideas on what you can do with the scrap pallet wood when you come across it. Just use some drywall screws, would be my tip, and I would use wood glue, another good tip for you. And you can assemble these the way you want. You just need some kind of a saw. Skill saw would work the best. Sometimes Ryobi's got them on sale, or rather Home Depot has Ryobi on sale. I picked one up, I think it was like 30 bucks or something, just to use to cut 2x4s and sheets of plywood, and it works really well. So you don't have to spend a lot of money if you don't have a saw. But these are the suggestions, and the wood was free, so actually it has a pretty good sized profit margin if you make these for yourself to sell. Okay, I'm the Home Handyman. I hope you folks enjoyed the video. If you know how to do these a different way or have any other suggestions, put it in the comment below. We can all share the information. I hope you click subscribe, and I hope you keep following me, and I'll see you in the next video. You folks have a great day. Bye-bye.